Coffee tables. Small, simple to build and pretty solid starting point for this YouTube furniture thing I have started. And when you are a beginner like me trying to build one, you probably think, how hard can it be? Just find a few boards, glue them together, do a bit of sanding and you're done. And while one part of me still agrees with that, the other part is like, yeah, not exactly. At least, that's not how this journey went. So let's start at the beginning, me picking up some boards. For this build I bought 3 sets of wood, 1 set of walnut boards and 2 olive wood slab pieces. So that already gives you a hint of what I will be working on in my upcoming projects. But for this video I'm sticking with walnut. 3 separate boards that, by the way, were once one single long board before I took them home. And honestly, building this coffee table feels like a pretty fitting project for where my skills are right now. This idea of building something that fits your level of skills actually came from Dr. Csikszentmihalyi, a psychologist who spent most of his life studying happiness, creativity, and why people feel truly engaged in what they do. He called it the flow state. It described that state where you're fully locked in, completely focused because the challenge in front of you is just slightly above your current ability. It's not that easy to be boring, but also not too hard to shut you down. It's right in that middle zone, where you're learning without really noticing time is passing. And that's exactly what I hope to feel during this project. It isn't simple enough to switch my brain off, and it's not overwhelming enough to quit. It's just something to keep me working, figuring things out, and occasionally wondering why I thought this was a simple coffee table. That is what I want this table to be for me. And if I can make some money from it in the end, that will be a great addition to this build. But it's not the focus. So this build started with planing the rough walnut boards. And even before I started this build, I had already made some mistakes without even noticing it. And that mistake was not spending enough time on the preparation. Because before gluing wooden boards together, you should always make sure that every board will be exactly the same thickness and that every tiny curvy bit on the board is completely cleaned up. After planning my boards, I have to admit that some of them were still slightly different in thickness, and I still had a few imperfections there. At the time, it didn't seem like a big deal to me. I was excited to move on to the next step and thought I could deal with it later. I thought that these things didn't really matter the outcome, but I found out that that's not really how woodworking works. And the funny thing is, most of the mistakes I make came down to one thing: a lack of knowledge. A lot of time I'm just making decisions on the fly, hoping they will work out. Meanwhile, people like Francis Bacon were already talking about this over 400 years ago, when he said, knowledge is power. And somehow, 4 centuries later, I'm still not listening to them. If that's not stubbornness, I don't know what is. Anyway, you have already seen me trying to get the side of the beams perfectly straight. In fact, I spent my entire previous video figuring out how to make seamless joints. My first attempt was to straighten the edge using the table saw. It got me close, but not quite close enough. The edge still wasn't perfectly straight. Then I tried a different approach. I clamped the boards together so I could easily cut them as one piece, making sure the blade would follow the exact joint line. To keep everything aligned, I first added some self-adhesive tape on the faces of the boards, and then reinforced the setup with a small wooden blocks to hold them tightly together. In theory, it was a solid idea, but in practice, it didn't really work out the way I was expected. So eventually, I decided to switch to a more traditional and honestly more professional solution: hand planing these boards. It takes time, but it also gives me much more control over the final result. And after spending a while hand planing the boards, I actually started to feel like I had finally gotten them perfectly straight. Everything felt right, but then I put them together, and this is what I saw. The middle was perfect, but the ends were miserable. There was a massive gap between them. It was like Moses had split the sea all over again. So my conclusion was this: hand planing can definitely work, but I just didn't have the skill set for it yet. But at that point I did know that I have to move on. Moving on to attempt number 4 to make seamless joints. This time I built a joint jig myself, the one I made in my previous video, and here you can see it live in action. So I set the saw to the right height, placed the board in position together with the jig and cut off a small strip of each board. And the jig actually felt good to use. It felt like I had finally found something that worked. In the before and after shots you can also clearly see the improvement. The seam joints were almost completely gone. But still I wasn't just fully satisfied. Because if I ever want to sell tables that feel truly professional, the last 1% has to be right as well. So after all these attempts, I decided it was worth investing in a proper planing machine. My future workflow is going to look like this. I will use the jointed jig to get the boards about 99% straight. And then I will use the machine to finish the final 1%. But buying a machine is one thing. Knowing how to actually use it properly is where the real difference is made. And unfortunately, that's something I still need to learn for this machine. And this point, where I start shaving the side of the beams with my new machine, is the part where everything I talked about before comes together. Because I didn't fully remove all the curves at the beginning of this build, I ended up creating a situation where flattening the boards later also introduced a slight twist in the edge of the boards. And next to that I also decided to cut the biscuit slots with my biscuit jointer, while some of the boards still weren't exactly the same thickness. This was so stupid of me. Because of that, those biscuits didn't sit perfectly aligned between the pieces, and everything will be just slightly off. Now I can accept that the first time I'm using a machine, the results might not be perfect. That's fine with me. But how I used to join the biscuit, it was just crap work of me. And I think the real issue here wasn't the method for the glue up itself. It was the way I was making decisions. I kept choosing the fast option in the moment, the one that felt the easiest or the most convenient right then and there. Even I didn't fully think through what it would mean later in the process. It was like solving a small problem quickly without realizing I was creating bigger ones down the line. And that's exactly what happened here. I didn't slow down to make sure everything was properly aligned before moving on. I just wanted to get to the next step. Looking back, that's where things started to go wrong. Because during the glue up I already started noticing that the biscuit joints weren't sliding together as easily as they should. And that's when it hits me. This is exactly why all the boards need to be the same thickness. Luckily I still managed to get everything assembled and clamped together. But I could already see that the wood and the biscuits started to fight each other inside the joint. And as you can see, the table started to pull itself out of shape. I tried to counteract it using some leftover MDF wood and clamps, just to keep everything as flat as possible. But even during the clamping process, you can literally see that the wood wanted to bend back into that warped shape. At this point, I already had a solution in mind. I would have to plane the surface back flat again, even though I knew it was going to be a lot of work, and I would definitely lose some thickness of the table in the final result. But I also realized something else. If I do it properly now, it should completely remove the twist and get everything back into alignment, making the table perfect again. To get the table flat again, I mounted my planar sled system. After that, I set up my guide rail system that allows me to move the router across the surface. But before I could start, I needed to install the correct trimming bit, and then the flattening process could begin. I started with the convex side of the table, the side that still had the most stability and contact, and the one I could get the most grip on. With each pass, I only removed a very small amount of material. I kept going until the entire surface had been touched at least once. During this process, I always start by finding the highest point on the surface. That becomes my reference. From there, every next pass I start on is an area that's already been hit, meaning it's already one of the higher points. This way I make sure I'm never removing too much material at once, which could cause tear out in the wood. It's a slow process, but it gives me full control over the final surface. I repeated the flattening process on the underside of the table as well, because the concave side obviously needed to be brought back into shape too. And even though it might look like it goes pretty fast in the video, in reality I spent quite a lot of time planing and working through it step by step. And every now and then, when you see how much material comes off the surface, it's always a bit of a reality check. But it was worth it, because now I can finally show you the joints. They are almost completely invisible. In this shot, the seam runs from left to right, but I can barely even see it myself. That was honestly a proud moment for me. So with that happy feeling, it was time to clean up this mess. After everything was cleaned up again, I also want to show you what was left of the table thickness. What used to be massive heavy beams are now slightly less massive beams. But I still think it works really well for a coffee table. In some cases, a thicker top looks better on a large table, while a slightly slimmer top can feel more balanced on something smaller like this. At least that's what I'm telling myself. Maybe I'm just trying to justify my previous mistakes. Either way, now that the table is finally flat and true, it was time to cut it down to its final dimensions. Using my speed square, I marked out the parts I wanted to remove. Then I made a cut with my saw. I did this with 2 passes. It reduces resistance on the blade, and in theory gives you a cleaner cut. At least that's something someone once taught me. I have kind of stuck with it. After that, I flipped the table and repeated the same process on the other side. Now that the table had reached its final dimensions, it was time to start finishing the process. I gathered my different trim bits. With these trim bits, I can give the edges of the table a nice rounded finish. For guidance, I used a cracked corner routing jig. I clamped it firmly in place so it wouldn't shift during routing, because the last thing I wanted was for it to move and ruin the edges of the table. While working through the process, I did notice that the result wasn't 100% perfectly straight everywhere, but the foundation was solid. And a small imperfection like that can usually be fixed later with sanding. But during the routing, I also noticed something else. There was still a small section where one of the seams between the boards hadn't fully closed up during the glue up. Luckily, it was only a minor error, but it did frustrate me a bit. Still, I decided to continue and move on to sanding the table. I started sanding with 60 grit and gradually worked my way up to 320 grit. With the 60 grit, I was mainly focused on removing the milling marks from the flattening process. At the highest speed setting, it worked fast and efficiently to bring the surface back to the consistent base. At the same time, I chose to leave the natural cracks and small imperfections in the wood. I still sanded them smoothly by hand, but I didn't try to remove them completely. For me, those natural marks give the wood character. Then it was time to sand the side of the table, and when it came to the corners, I lowered the speed of the sander. It gave me much more control and allowed me to really refine those edges cleanly. I repeated this process on all 4 remaining sides as well. Once all 4 sides were fully sanded and refined, I continued with the final sanding stages. Between a few of the sanding passes, I also whipped the surface with water. This raises the wood fibers, making them stand up slightly so I can sand them down again in the next pass. This method helps to achieve a much smoother and softer finish of the wood. In a previous table I built, I didn't do this step, and after applying oil, I suddenly started feeling all these tiny fibers when I ran my hand over the surface. These weren't visible, but you could feel them. That's something I really want to avoid this time. So after sanding for some decent time, this was the result. For the next step, I needed my trim router again. At this point, the top and the side of the table were already fully sanded, so I could finally start adding the rounded edges. But before I started, I had one question in my head. What's actually the best order here? Do you round the edges first and then sand everything smooth afterwards? Or do you fully sand the tabletop first and only then shape the edges? In the end, I decided to combine both of these two workflows. First, I finished all the sanding, then I added the rounded edges with the trim router, and after that I did a final light sanding pass to clean everything up and blend it all together. While sanding, I also collect a big amount of sawdust, and instead of throwing it away, I decided to use it for something useful. There was still a very small seam between the two main boards of the table, so I mixed the sawdust with a bit of wood glue and used it as a natural filler. The idea behind this is simple. Because the dust comes from the same wood, the color should match perfectly, making the repair much less visible. I filled the seam on both the top and the underside of the table, making sure everything was fully packed and smooth. Then I had to wait a few days to let the glue fully cure and harden properly. After that, I came back and sanded everything again, and that's when the results really started to show. The seam had almost completely disappeared in the wood. That was a really satisfying moment, because it finally felt like the surface was becoming one solid piece again. And with the top of the table finished, I repeated the exact same process on the underside of the table as well. Once the table was essentially finished, it was time to attach the legs. For this, I chose two relative small minimalistic table legs. I didn't want the coffee table to be too high, because that would throw off the proportions between the size of the table and the height of the base. So this table ended up slightly lower than most standard coffee tables. Personally, I think that actually works better with this design. To mount the legs, I drilled 4 holes per side into the underside of the table. This is always a slightly nerve-wracking step, because everything needs to be lined up perfectly with how the legs will be attached. After that, I installed the threaded inserts into the holes. These basically screw themselves firmly into the wood, creating a strong and reliable connection. With the bolts and a horizontal driver bit, I was able to attach the legs just in a few seconds. What I really like about the system is that it allows the customer to easily remove or reinstall the legs at any time. It makes the whole table much more practical, especially if it's meant for sale. Once the legs were attached, it was time for the final step, applying oil. And that's always one of the most satisfying moments in any project. The oil completely brings the wood to life and takes the finish to another level. Seeing the grain pop like that is what makes all the work worth it. And if you're still here after 18 minutes enjoying this video, then I would like to ask you to consider subscribing. Making videos like this takes time, a lot of time, especially because it all happens alongside a 9-to-5 job. For this project alone, I recorded more than 500 video clips, and that's for a relative simple coffee table. So if you have enjoyed following this process, learned something along the way, or just like seeing projects like this come to life, subscribing would generally help me out. Thank you for watching, and now let's take a look to the final result. Oh, and before I forget, this table is actually for sale. You can find it on q-studios.nl. And with that said, I will see you in the next one.